because the other things, they all intertwine, so it's hard to put them in a true audience. But I was going to just start with the idea, because I mean, everyone wants as big as audience as they can. And audiences wax and wane, as we've heard. Many factors come into play: time of year, time of day, what's going on, whether there's some big gripe on Steam blockchain that people want to come and talk about, or whether Steam blockchain is off and then people come on because there's not other things to do. But how can we consistently build audience for all our shows, really? We've got obviously shows all over the place, but if I'm gonna, while people think about that, I'm gonna play another quick tune, and this one is, we'll see if it plays straight off. This one is Sound Legion, which I like, so I'm going to play this while people shuffle about, and anyone wants to come on air, move into blockchain, or if they can't move themselves, let me know and I'll move them on, and I will play this little tune if it comes. Who knows, it might do, you never know. Here we go, it might come. It was playing earlier. Or alternatively, one can press two buttons and one of them will start first before the other one. Sometimes, you never know. Sometimes if I refresh. So this is Flight of a Huge Bird by Termite. So that's what we've got now. So everyone that wants to come on air, pile in, and we'll be back on that in a moment. Hard stop. There we go. I love that way of playing music. There we go. Right, if anyone wants to come on there that can't, let me know and I'll drag them on. Otherwise, they're ready to unmute and shout loudly if they want to say something. We'll see how this plays out. I haven't done one of these, so it could be a bit random and wild. But yeah, so the question is, if anyone wants to kick off, how can we build audience? I saw one person mention bribery, which is a good way, and in fact, from my experience, is the most effective way on all the shows that I ever go around looking at. And for a while, I did go to every single show when I was doing the listings, and giving away coins is a good way. So anyone want to kick off on that topic of how we can build audience?
I could go ahead if anyone doesn't mind.
Yep, far away, Greg.
I was just saying, I mean, it's amazing that there's a dozen podcast creators from so many different networks all hanging out in this one room right now. I mean, just having even just a separate Discord channel where we can all put our things to listen to and share around would be quite helpful for our particular groups. And I don't know, I don't speak for everybody, but like anybody can post to my tag. We don't try to own any creators by any stretch of the imagination, nothing even close to that. So there's ways to, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a union guy here, so don't go too far with my idea, guys. I'm not saying anything too nuts, but I'm just thinking it makes sense because I've never been in a room with this many people with the skills to actually produce these kinds of shows. So it's pretty amazing. That's my 2 cents, but I won't hog up all the time, guys. I'll be right here hanging out if anyone wants to know. But I'll
Thank you for that, Greg.
I'll
Thank you.
give it a go.
I was going to say, yeah, JP, if any, because you're one of the people that would be on one of the shows like Whale Shares where you do give out tokens, which I've observed is a great incentive to go to a radio show. What's your
Sure.
feelings on that?
Well, wasn't even referring to whale shares. We actually were doing that in Steam Music Alliance for a while. I haven't done it in quite some time because in order to do those giveaways, I was doing it by way of lottery, and we have to have like 10 or more listeners for that to happen. So that doesn't happen every week. One thing I noticed is that it's easier to get an audience when it's a talk show and there's participation, even if there isn't any giveaways. So it's easy for a lot of shows in MSP, Whale Shares, and Steam at Ramble, particularly when there's live curations, whether it's like a free for all or it's like specific posts. That's a lot easier than straight up music shows. But then if it's like a combination, like I know Krim usually has a really good audience because she plays music and is very informative about the blockchain and Steemit and things going on, and she's very informative about the music she plays as well. So that helps a lot to keep the engagement, to keep your audience engaged. It's difficult, I think, for people who are just DJs, just playing music, like myself sometimes, where I just mix drum and bass or hip hop, because even though there are nights where I can have a great audience, but not every single week do people want to listen to one specific genre all the time. So varying it up and having audience participation, I think, is a huge plus. And marketing is a big thing. I mean, that's what we use the platform. We're on Discord engaging each other, but Steemit is there so we can post and promote and remind each other. And when we help each other by re-steams and comments and things, I think that helps a lot too.
Cool.
Pensive, it's global.
Hi there, Gomer.
Thank you for mentioning marketing there. Move 19, I call him. He's got so many names, it's always confusing. Marketing is incredibly difficult when you have volunteers and only volunteers. And to build a brand and then improve upon that brand is very, very important. And with that respect, by the way, it's also very easy to get listeners. It's really difficult to keep listeners. And so that's where we probably need to discuss as well. But coming to marketing, I do have a surprise here.
Go for it.
Because Minu's girlfriend, Anka Polo, has, with sweat and tears, based on our demanding feedback and specifications, designed
And
a
very
banking new
feedback
MSP
often.
Waves logo for us, which we will premiere here on your show. And here it is. And let me just put the actual one of the files. They are all in the actual post. There you go. It's for dark background and for light background. And why did we do this? Because it's in the post actually. Because we want MSP Waves to be recognizable on the blockchain, particularly on Steam, on Steemit. But the previous logo that we have had was good for a year and a half, but it took up a lot of real estate on any graphic design. So we thought something absolutely recognizable from far away that people would recognize and say, "Yay, there's MSP Waves!" And it's incredibly difficult to build a brand, and that's what Ron and I and the team are trying to do, because our roots are within the Steemit community. And we don't want to give this away. That doesn't mean we don't want to branch out, but this is one of the attempts to build up in that brand on Steemit and MSP PAL, which we are on, of course. And I like to thank Meno and particularly Anka Polo for their incredible support in that project, and also the MSP PAL moderators team, who have had a previous look at these things as they were still in the making. So thanks everyone for having that. And we are now rebranded.
Cool. Excellent. Good. No, I like those. That's good. And thank you, Anka, for making those. They look really, really good. So thank you. Cool. I mean, I just wanted to say a couple of sort of slight housekeeping announcements that I meant to say earlier. If anyone, either coming on air or any of the listeners, in fact, as well, if anyone wants to make a post about this show with further ideas or thoughts afterwards, I'll be putting out the recording, and people can feel free to grab the YouTube or DTube off recordings out of those and put them in their posts, and they can put a post out and we can all vote on them, etc. So feel free to do that. I'll probably put the recording up tomorrow morning. Second thing, I tried to invite as many people representative as I could and that wanted to come along. I have invited some people from some of the radio stations in Africa, but unfortunately none of them have actually turned up. There are a whole bunch of radio shows that I started to come across when I was doing those listings that I used to do, and I've invited some, but some haven't come, and the ones in Asia, it's the wrong time of year, wrong time of day for as well. But as well as the English-speaking radio world on Steam, there is a very large and very fast-growing non-English language radio, let's call that word, radio community on Steam as well. So there are, I lost count, there used to be a dozen. There's probably about 25 stations on to do with Steam at least, I would think now. I mean, there are loads of them. So that, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I was going to ask Ilana Texlat, because I mean, you mentioned something that caught my ear a lot about the potential for going beyond Steam, which is sort of one of the goals of things like DTube and everything, and obviously Utopian. It's not just about being hidden in our little Steam corner; it's about taking it out. How would you sort of see being able to take the radio podcast, whatever we call it, out beyond Steam? How would you sort of look at doing that?
Well, it depends on the topic of your podcast or radio show. Since we focus on open source, we have a very clear target audience, and that's the open source community. If we want to make it a little more granular, then it's the open source blockchain developer community. But then if we narrow it down even more, then it's the open source development community on Steam. But we don't want to do that. That's the whole point. We want to go as broad as we can, get people interested in what we're talking about. And since, Steam is obviously mentioned, these people will also come onto the blockchain, and the blockchain needs all the developers it can get.
Yes.
So,
and I mean, Utopian presumably is already developing a profile beyond Steam, so I guess that gives you a head start, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. And fortunately, one of the things that we do have, not a lot, but we do have some budget. So we haven't really invested much in marketing the radio show yet, because as I've said before, we've done 14 shows, but we're still finding our footing. We're still trying to find that perfect balance between um, delivering content that will be interesting to the open source community, and still, being on Steam, because that's where Utopian was born, and still the topics of conversation and the majority of multi-listener shows where we get like dozens of listeners, I think like 50 or crazy numbers of listeners compared to other shows, are the ones that have to do with Steam stuff, Steam development stuff. We had impromptu witness forum last week, and all these things, they attract more audience right now. But as we start placing more budget on marketing the show, once we refine it to the point where we're happy with it, then I'm going to guess a lot more people will be coming into the Discord and going, okay, so what's going on around here, and what's this Steam they keep mentioning?
Cool. Thank you for that. Does anyone else on any of their shows, specialized or otherwise, have sort of the idea that they might be able to go beyond the Steam ecosystem with what they produced? I would be interested to know if anyone else. I mean, it hadn't particularly occurred to me, so I was very interested to hear that from Ilana. Has anyone else had that sort of thought? I mean, maybe JP, because you've sort of come from outside inwards. How do you sort of view that dynamic of being outside and inside of Steam?
it's very difficult. I'm new. I'm pretty new to blockchain. I've only been on Steam since January, and I basically did a complete and total switch. I almost abandoned mainstream social media completely. I will still post some of my I'll still go over to Facebook and just share my posts and things, but I don't actually utilize the platform anymore. And like somebody mentioned, Nick Fisco, who actually recently left Steemit to go back to Facebook because with his particular audience, his kind of show, he actually has a better reach. And he's right and so it's very hit or miss, and it really depends on your target audience. Blockchain and this kind of decentralization, I think, is still so new that it's only really going to reach people who are looking for it. I think that we're here because we found Steemit at the right time in our lives. It's definitely true for me and true for a lot of people I've spoken to. Um, I don't know. I think we have to work hard for that to happen right now, but I think that will change as blockchain and decentralization becomes more mainstream. I do notice that on the mainstream platforms, people are talking about it more. People are looking more to get off of it. And if you notice, oh God, I can't remember his name now, but the guy who invented the World Wide Web, Sir something Brenner, he has actually now created a platform called Solid, which is
I saw that Tim Berners-Lee. Yeah.
Right. Burners. So I think that in the next couple of years, we're going to see a tremendous change, and we're going to see more people in the mainstream public, jumping onto blockchain and decentralization. For now, I just think it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take us kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out with mainstream and decentralization.
Cool.
So something that I've been doing, not so much with my radio shows, but with posts, is turning them into audio podcasts and distributing them out through Anchor FM to their network. And they're specifically geared to say, this is content that can be found on the Steam platform. So that's one thing that I've been doing.
That's a good idea.
Do you get much pickup on that, Shadows? What sort of response do you get?
It hasn't been too bad. I've only done a few of them, and I've been kind of away from it for a little bit because of some health issues, but I've had fairly good response with the few that I've done.
Cool. That's interesting. I mean, one thing that crossed my mind while I was saying this, I mean, currently, through things like MSP and SMA, that's helped develop the Steam music culture, which is one of the strongest parts of Steam, or one of the strongest communities. And there's a lot of really, really talented Steam musicians, and I sort of got to know a lot when I was doing My Life in 8 Songs. And now, of course, there's the crossover from Steam, D-Sound, and now into Tune and Music Coin or whatever. I'd be interested to know whether anyone's already looking at the idea of doing a sort of wider blockchain-based music shows that would have Steam musicians, Tune musicians, Music Coin maybe. I don't know whether Zig or anyone sort of knows if anything like that is coming up.
Well, that's kind of putting kind of seeding the territory there for us. I at this point, last week was the first week that we actually ran the Bring Your Own Tune party. So, but it did have such a warm response. I could see it growing. So, I think we're definitely, certainly for our spotlight on the artist, where we actually give a full 20-minute slot to the character development of the artist or the artist process, and soft interview style that really lets the artists open up and give that human interest to the audience. I could see that developing into something that the outside world, not just Steam people, but it certainly also as it can do it to get people onto Steam, though, because really that does seem to be the cohesive, the actual ingredient that makes it all cohesive. Having everyone involved have that common interest in Steam.
Yeah, I mean, it does raise some interesting possibilities, because I'm not a musician, so I don't know the whole sort of scene. I only know little bits of it, but tunes out there and Music Coins out there. I'm not entirely sure which ones are real blockchain-based ones, and Steam's here. But obviously, musicians on Steam would like to be known outside of the Steam blockchain, and obviously that's why they go to Tune and the like. And it would be interesting to know whether there would be a way of putting together sort of block music shows that are, promote them as a package. That would be an interesting area to explore. And if it was rooted in Steam, it would be a way, obviously, of bringing people into Steam. There must be a DApp to be made there with a great big fat delegation, I'm sure. I'm sure someone could do that. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, well, that certainly goes along with what I'm saying, is that it is a viable conduit into Steam. And I think this is a theme that you've been working on for a while, Pensif, is how to onboard folks onto Steam. So as much as, MSP Waves being part of the Peace Abundance Liberty Network, part of the whole Minnow Support project, which really is about growing Steam contributors, as much as of course we have to sustain ourselves as part of the Peace Abundance Liberty Network. That there's that process of sustaining, but I have noticed the music being an interest, outside musicians getting interested in Steam, and outside musicians getting interested in Discord, and it seems as though Discord may actually be an easier stepping stone compared to the 1 week wait, for instance. It takes there's some persons have told me it takes as much as 2 or 3 weeks to get on the Steam it these days, but Discord's instantaneous, and getting your music played on a Discord, for instance, MSP Waves Radio is fairly a fairly straightforward process versus, say, FM, where you still build a relationship with the person, the music directors of the, for instance, MSP Waves, but it's not quite the same as FM, where you'd have to drive and visit the station or something like that to actually get the visit.
I mean, Discord is quite funny, because obviously if one's from particularly the gaming world, you would probably know about Discord anyway before you come here. But I only learned about Discord through Steam, and people sort of mistakenly think Discord is almost part of Steam because it's so integral to it. But of course, Discord is nothing to do with Steam. It's out there. So, and as many of the shows are based in Discord, it could be a very good entry point to bring people in. But
that's what I've noticed. At least one person I know of has been able to come to Discord fairly quickly, and now the next step is to get them fully indoctrinated into Steam it also. But like I said, that does seem to be the cohesive theme. We all seem to be interested in blockchain and interested in the social change in general, whether it's cultural and music and art, or whether it's actual socioeconomic change that blockchain and blockchain and cryptocurrency has to offer the society in general.
Yeah, cool. Before we sort of go on to another topic, I mean, we've discussed they're primarily marketing outwards, but there's still lots of ground to cover within the Steam blockchain, because I mean, the biggest radio shows, very rarely do touch 100. Most a very good show would be getting about 50 people, which out of a daily active number of 20,000 or whatever it might be at the moment is a teeny weeny fraction. And even if you take subdivide that into the English speaking sector, but a lot of the people that come to the shows aren't first language English. So, I mean, we're getting only a teeny fraction of the people, and a lot of the people go to a lot of different shows on a lot of different channels. So we're still only touching probably, less than 5% of the potential audience. Are there ways that we can get to more audience out there on Steam, or is it not relevant to other people? My feeling it is relevant to other people, but how do you grab them? Time differences obviously come into play, but at any one time in the day, that's only for a certain segment. What ideas, what should we do to actually, either for individual shows or for individual stations or collectively, what should we do to actually try and get more audience get more audience, full stop? Any thoughts on that? Any ideas?
I guess for starters, it's a topic that Denise and I have been talking about. For instance, she's interested in getting a Steemit account for just our show alone. But the other thing I'm wondering is it helpful to have multiple hosts on a show? I would imagine it would be, just the fact that you have more hands to send out, post various things about the show, whether it's a recap or a coming attraction kind of thing for the show. Whether it's better to have one person or multiple hosts from their own account, or a single account for a show or something like that. That may also be part of the conversation.
I mean, certainly putting out posts helps. I mean, I have a formula basically. For every show, I generate 3 posts. I put one out about 4 days before, when I more or less know my guests. I put one out about an hour before the show, and then I put a recording out afterwards. It still doesn't grow numbers massively, must be because my shows are no good, but that's the other factor, of course. But and then we used to have, but as Globo said, it's about volunteers. We used to have, I can't remember if they're weekly or daily sort of MSP ones that went out for all the shows. And then I did, for some months, I did that weekly listing of all the radio shows, which got bigger and bigger and took more and more time. But fascinating to do, and I met loads and loads and loads of people through it. But it was taking me getting on for a day to produce it. And curious, thank you, Shadows Bob. But the thing that I found, I purposely stopped it to see if anyone would say, "Hey, are you still doing that thing?" And do you know how many people asked me that question? No one at all. So I didn't bother to revive it. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same situation as far as the recap of my show. I like to give all the guests all the attention they deserve, and it is taking me the better part of all day Saturday. And in fact, this week I just had writer's block and I couldn't even get to it. But I'm trying to get it done before tomorrow's show. Otherwise, I missed it this week. But yeah, I guess that's it. When you spend a whole day doing something like that, it's you do want to see some sort of appreciation or some sort of
yeah. I mean, I did
results,
it.
some sort of tangible results for your effort, right?
I did every Sunday. I would collect every single radio and contact every single radio host to find if they changed or added, etc. So it took a long time. Great thing to do, sit chatting entirely all day on private messages on Discord. But no one missed it, so I stopped doing it. But and it was getting very large. But it was an interesting thing to do. Whether it had much impact on people coming to shows, I guess at the margin it did. So that's one way of doing it. But yeah, I mean, it's primarily up to show hosts to go out and promote it. One of the reasons I use a technique called the school photo technique, which in the UK, and I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, local newspapers, every September will put out pictures. They will go around schools and take photos of every class in every school and put them in their paper. And then, because there's so many kids in there and so many grandparents and parents, they sell loads of papers. So that's what I developed, use that technique, which is why I have lots of guests. The other reason, trade secret, why I have lots of guests on my show is if you have lots of guests, they will tell people about the show as well. So it's another reason I have lots of guests. So yeah, that sort of marketing, and I guess there's more to do, and up to us to go out and do it. The other part of whether you get guests, of course, is what the content is. Content largely is divided between talking, which I do with guests. I mean, you can have talking where the hosts talk by themselves between 2 or 3 co-hosts, which is one approach. You can do talking where we bring in guests, like I do and others do, and main event and Snecky is where I learned it from. So I bring in guests and do it in various guises, and I've done quite a few different guises. And then you can have straightforward music ones, and then you can have any blend of them at all, which I've done various variations of them. Each of them has their own challenges. I mean, getting guests is a very interesting and very challenging thing. And I spend, I mean, because when I was running both shows, I was having about 15 guests a week. So I would spend, on average, it takes me about two hours per guest to put together a show. So I can spend a good 2 hours on a show getting people, because you message people, you find out when they're available, tell them times, etc. They can't, whatever. And then I cohesively bring them together in the show. One of the problems is sort of finding guests. and of course a lot of shows swap guests. So we almost need like a little agency, a little bureau that gathers together all the people that would like to be on radio shows, and then distributes them to the shows, which I do a little bit with some of the people that I meet. I purposely try to target people outside, I guess, the sort of first language English community. I try to get a lot of people from other countries, which has its own challenges in terms of both language and often internet connection if they're from countries haven't got fast internet connection. So getting guests is challenging, but I find personally very rewarding. And I don't know whether people would find some whether people just happily go off and get their own guests, or whether some sort of bureau of radio show hosts might be an interesting concept. On the other end of the scale, music, we have the challenges of licensing, which I originally used to do licensing and go off to Sound Exchange and waste hours messing around with Sound Exchange, which is a dreadful thing in my mind, which is why I swapped to My Life in 8 Songs with Steam Musicians. And so that's why I did it. So any thoughts on content, music, chat, or anything of what works, what doesn't work, what is the secret of success on that?
You know, it's really interesting, listeners and Pensive. There are so many diverse shows on here. And I see shows such as music shows by Steamians, by the way, getting very, very high ratings. I get that the Witness panel and all other panels done by Agod are some of the most listened to, average about 70 listeners, I think, just in Discord. Shows One Media, Steamit musicians. When I do a 432 frequency waves on Steamit, it's one of I get my best ratings from that. Um, I think one of the difficulties with this station in particular, MSP Waves, is that we are so diverse, and therefore we have a great fluctuation between some shows and others. And when you look into the real world, where radio, FM radio, main event knows exactly, you have sort of subject mission. You have talk radios, KFSO in San Francisco. They all follow a subject, and we don't have that luxury just yet. If we were, that would be fantastic, but it costs money to have different channels and say, well, we dedicate one for music, one for talk shows, one for prepper stuff, and so forth. So it's really, really difficult. And I think, well, one thing we might want to do is start grouping things together, but then it becomes really difficult to schedule that as well. We right now, as far as I know, we only have two political radio shows: one of free speech with Rondo, and the Chaos Show on mine. So we certainly, I would encourage anyone who has inclinations toward that kind of show.
I'd say M19's show, at least Hanging with Who's, gets a little political.
Yeah, fair enough. True. So I mean, another potential DJ just pinged me an hour ago and said, "Hey, there's this free slot on Saturday. What about how do I go about it?" So, it's great stuff. We need more listeners. When we need more shows. If we get more shows, we get hopefully. It is also a matter of funding. Right now, 4 dedicated souls run the station 24/7, and believe you me, this is not easy. This is not easy to be up on a Saturday, be up on a Wednesday, and any day, and do this day in, day out, 24/7. This is a huge commitment by not only the radio hosts, but also obviously the ops team. And we are working in the background to, despite all the big, great work that Ron has done in terms of automating things and stabilizing things, we are working to onboard more trusted folks into the ops team, which is desperately needed. So if you're interested, if you're listening and you're interested and want to help out, then please do contact Ronan or me, and we plan you in that. We want to expand, but right now it's one at a time, one show at a time. And the more you as a listener support the show by being there and engaging, the more you encourage the listeners as well, pardon me, the hosts as well, because we want to be honest, we had 3-4 shows leaving in recent history, shows that have had good success, but after a year or so, the host decided it's too much commitment, and I do understand it. I know one media just said, he's dedicating all Saturday to prep this one show. I have 3 shows. I know what it takes to put a quality show together. So it is dedication. It is not easy. So hang in there, hang with us. I think, you know, the listeners are deciding. The listeners give us the ratings, and if there is no listener at all, then this might be a sign that that show needs a replacement.
Now, I
It,
have a word on the content.
yep, go for it.
I think that because you have to understand the internet is just an overwhelmingly unimaginable big audience. You have people, if you go to Facebook, you can see people opening pearls and getting thousands and thousands of people watching the live stream. I think it's pearls or something like that. I don't. They have these pearl parties, I believe, and yeah, millions of people are watching these, like just like these middle-aged ladies opening pearls and then selling them, and they sell 'em. And
I'll
it's just
do a show on that. That's all right. Give me an idea. Yep, Gary.
well, I'm saying like there is a niche for everything. This is the internet. There is a market for every single thing what you're doing. The problem is getting the people. And if you notice the crowds, like we have some big crowds, we have some small crowds. They mostly wax and wane according to Steam price, and that's Steam price and audience participation are highly correlated. At least in my observations over the past year. Um, but if you wanted to look into like really growing the audience, I think it's going to take a more collective approach. And there's everybody. There's all these different individual kind of actions as far as networking and improving your content and improving the show, improving delivery and stuff that we can really concentrate on. But then there's also a kind of a collective, and that's kind of like the big picture that I'm seeing is in as far as this open source automated kind of setup that we hope to be able to get built and then introduce out. If we have multiple multiple channels going 24/7 with all sorts of different content from all around the world, doing it their own way, trying it out this way or trying it out that way, and have all this competition, all of a sudden that's going to attract a much broader audience to come check out what is going on here. How is this all being funded? Who is doing? It's going to start getting people to ask questions. It's going to start attracting a much larger base, and that the kind of attention that we need to attract that huge internet audience out there to really, because in this attention economy that we're in today, it's not an easy task. What you have to do is you have to make waves, and in order to do that, I think having just all sorts of options and all sorts of media just presented everywhere is really going to be the big first step to where we start seeing some kind of like you know drastic improvements on
Cool.
drastic improvements on the audience participation.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just going to ask. I mean, MSP was the first and original station, of course, and then came SteamStar, and others. I mean, MSP has the sort of weight behind it of being MSP, and therefore people know about it. I was wondering if anyone that's on one of the newer stations, like Can I Curate or Ron Shadows as well with Rambling Radio. I don't know if, particularly if anyone. Did you? Was it you, JP, that said you were on Can I Curate, or who was it?
Yep.
Said on, yeah,
Yeah, once a month.
I was wondering two things. One, sort of, what made people think of setting up a new station rather than thinking, "Hey, let's go and do a show about this on MSP," or one of the other bigger, established ones. What made them sort of start start a new one, and what's the challenges of getting an audience when you start a new station?
Good
I think
question.
maybe Grim and JP might want to talk to that, and maybe Shadows.
I
Yeah, I can
actually
take.
already had an audience.
maybe if we can go JP first, and then Grim, and then
Go
Shannon.
ahead.
I actually already had an audience because I was doing the PYPT, and we just added the other shows when SteamStar went down, which we were actually already moving towards those shows. Crazy BG came over to Rambling Radio. One of the things I've been finding is where there's interaction from the audience, and that the audience actually comes on air with us in parts of the show, seems to retain the audience fairly well. Last week we didn't do PYPT because of the hard fork. I said, okay, let's do a hangout, and it went on as long as PYPT would have.
Yeah, that was
and both
fun.
shows, so it was amazing.
Yeah, it's a good question because I struggle with that a little bit, and it's frustrating sometimes because there are several Discords that I like to be involved in, and it's hard to schedule my own shows around the other shows, and sometimes people think of it as competition, and it gets a little frustrating. But some of the Discords, and Grim and John, who's here from Canada, could speak better on this. But I think that some people really want their Discord servers for specific topics, right? So Canada Curate is not just a Discord channel, but it's an active account that goes out of their way to curate cannabis related posts, whereas MSP Waves is a very broad scope, right? And MSP on many times of the day is actually quite family friendly. At least we try. And not because cannabis isn't family friendly, but we are broadcasting to the entire world, where there are places where it's still very illegal, and even in the States there's places where it's illegal for minors, for instance. So it does make sense to have specific Discord servers. And someone said, Rondon said something earlier about having like something where somebody could kind of channel surf and find what they like, and settle on a music show or a talk show or comedy or whatever. And I think that will ultimately bring more listeners, and I think that will ultimately enrich our platform. I don't look at it as competition. It is frustrating, I understand. But like for instance, I record all my shows, and I know a lot of other people whose shows I listen to record them and upload them later. So you're really never missing it.
Cool. Fracas Grim? Grim? I don't know if you wanted to say anything on that. Yeah, hang on.
Pothead.
Yeah, I mean the sort of challenge of setting up new radio stations where you haven't got the weight of MSP or one of the more established ones behind you. What particular challenges does that present?
Fuck hard forks.
Hey, Pensive, this is Shane.
Hi there, Shane.
Hey, I do have something to say on this. At one point, I did do two separate shows on another Discord, but the shows really didn't have anything to do with the Discord's main focus. And
was this the ones on the writer's block, I think?
Yeah, correct. So, they were fun shows to do, but because the Discord wasn't necessarily focused towards what the shows were, I found that difficult. That the audiences were small. The people that were listening, they were great. They were there. They were interactive, but it was the people that were already on the Discord itself. So, I noticed there wasn't a lot of carryover. One of the shows did move from MSP over to there. But it sort of petered out basically because the audience didn't tend to go along with it. And I think a lot of it has to do is to make sure that your shows fit the focus of the station that you're running, as you had said before. Here at MSP, it's big enough where we can have a variety, and that doesn't really bother it too much. But if you're on a smaller Discord, make sure that your shows are hitting that niche audience.
Yes, yeah. I mean, since when I was used to do that weekly listing, gradually I started to see more and more stations grow based in Discords. I mean, they're a particular type of radio show, and the non-English language ones particularly. And of course, they're all catering for a Malaysian audience or a West African audience or a particular topic theme, and that's good. I mean, there are lots of them out there. Finding them can be the tricky thing, which is the fun thing I used to enjoy doing when I was doing the listings. That finding them, they'd either find me. Increasingly, people found me. They would come and hunt me down to get me on the listings. And since then, I suspect the numbers have tripled since then. But the trouble is that, you know, audience-wise, the audiences aren't sort of collectively. I guess the audience is growing, but of course, for any one place, because of the fragmentation, diversity, whatever, the audience numbers are keeping quite low.
What happened to the feed? That is weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Stick with, you know, like the first couple shows, I think should, this is just opinion, of course, should stick with your main topic. And then as your audience grows and everyone gets to know each other a little better, that are normal listeners, you know, then you can start diversifying out into little niches that other people share within that niche. And you can go on to EDM, as you said, or whatever else the topics may be.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, I don't see it as a bad thing that all these stations are popping up. You know, the only downside is it's when you've got the mathematical dynamic of activity on the Steam blockchain going lower, which is as I can't remember who was, someone mentioned it's totally tied, Rondon, I think, to Steam price, which is, you know, almost a mathematical certainty in terms of overall activity. So you've got a declining number divided by an increasing number of stations, and if the numbers on individual ones are going along, this is getting like a maths lesson now, but what I feel we need to do is, because I think one of the problems is the percentage of the overall active Steamians at any one time is sort of staying the same that engage with radio shows. So you've got whatever it is, 10%, 8% of Steamians, active Steamians at any one time, divided by an increasing number of channels. I guess what we really need to do is increase that percentage of the 20,000 active Steamians on a day, try and get more percentage on it, and that's marketing, that's content, and that's reach and engagement and all the rest of it, I guess. So yeah, I don't know the answer, but more stations probably helps. And I guess another good bit, which may happen, it probably almost certainly does happen, is that people, once they get with the flavor of once they discover radio, as we call it on Steam, they start looking around and finding other stations, and that is a good thing, I guess. It introduces more people to it. So yeah, that's good. So yeah, we covered quite a bit of audience. I don't know if any particular things came out of it, but we've covered audience and content. Two other things I wanted to talk about particularly are technical and finance. Which shall we go first, technical or finance? Anyone fancy? In fact, John Spalding. I want to bring John Spalding on. Is John in the audience? Let's have a look. Because John, no, he isn't. I'm going to grab John Spalding. I don't know if anyone.
Waiting room there.
Is he? I didn't see him there. Let me move him live on here. Sorry, I didn't see it. It's gone off the bottom of my screen. John.
Hey.
Hello. Thank you for coming along. You're probably not as well known here as many other people, because you operate in a different area. But thank you for coming along. I was keen for John to come along because I came across the steaming pile the other day, which is a rather different concept to many of our shows that we do, and you do it on Vim now. So would you like to just briefly introduce yourself and tell us in brief how your sort of show operates, the steaming pile, because it is quite a different model to other sort of shows that we do on MSP and other places.
Sure. Thanks, Pensive. Hi, everyone. Nice to see. I've read posts from several of you, and it's good to be in this room It also is a little bit confusing. This is my first like Discord or MSP Waves kind of broadcast. Actually, both MSP Waves broadcast and Discord. But I'm John Spalding, and I'm actually new to the Steam community in general. I started my account in October, and I didn't really know where I fit or how I would fit in. And then in 2000 in March of this year, I kind of reached out. I did a couple blog posts and the introduce yourself post, and I was really like just kind of trying to understand what was going on here with this blockchain. And then the idea came to me that, in the past I had tried to do some broadcasting live to YouTube and Facebook and things like that. And I was like, well, and my background is in organizational development. So I'm used to facilitating large groups, small groups, helping organizations create their strategic plans and just facilitating conversations. And I said, well, what if we started a show? And I put out a pitch. It was like actually like the 5th blog post that I did on Steam. And I said, let's have a show called The Steaming Pile for it. And at first it was with DLive, and obviously you've mentioned Vim, so and everyone here I think does kind of know the situation with them right now. But so I said for the broader Steam and DLive community, and we come in there, and I use Zoom to facilitate the conversation. So people come in on Zoom. That's a live video conference software or technology application, and the show's really just kind of evolved from there. And this past September, we had a really structured schedule. Usually it's open space where everybody comes in and they provide everyone throws out the topics, and then we create an agenda based on the topics that people want to talk about within the first 15 minutes while we're there. It's a processing technique called open space technology. But then this last September, we started off with covering smart media tokens, and then we did best practices of live streaming, and then we rounded out the month with Steam Basic Income, and just had people from the broader Steam community come in and kind of introduce themselves. And we do a couple gimmicky things, like any new person that comes on the show, we ask them 10 rapid fire questions and things like that. So
I heard those the other day.
Yeah, that's it. That's really it. I'll stop yapping because I can talk all day. But if anyone has any questions, we can do that.
Yeah, no, I it caught my eye because as I said, I sort of look around at a lot of the radio stuff going on, or podcasting, or whatever we call it, and most of them are of a similar model, but yours was quite a different model. I mean, how do you see scaling that? Because I mean, for me here, I've got, well, I think up to 15 guests I had at one point, which is quite a difficult mechanically quite difficult to manage in this sort of setup. But
Sure.
presumably you can manage numbers easier in the sort of arrangement you have. But how far can you scale that?
So there's a couple different ways to take the scaling question from my vantage point. One way that we scale is that if the topics are too divergent, then we have people, I'll use the Zoom software to create breakout rooms, and I'll just assign people to lead the discussions in those breakout groups. And then as people come in, I assign them to different areas, and then I just kind of let the folks know, give them a warning, breakout groups are going to be dissolving. We're all going to come back. But then the other one is, and I was just talking about this with a couple other live streamers, is setting up another Zoom account for folks that wanted to use Zoom while they were live streaming. And we all like kind of chip in whatever Steam we get or whatever makes it equitable for whoever wanted to use that platform. Because not everybody can or has the ability or has the funds to use that platform. It's not expensive, but there's like they're like any other tech company, right? They offer you a free service, but then it's like freemium. So if you want more stuff that you can do within the platform, you got to pay.
Cool. Yeah, I used Zoom once because one of my guests, Kenny's Kitchen, in fact, we couldn't connect through anything else, and that was the only thing that would work. And that was the first time I'd encountered Zoom, but mixing it with Discord actually didn't work very well. But we got the show out, so that's
Gotcha.
the first time I'd done it. So I mean, what sort of number do you? Because I mean, you sort of have 9, 10, 11 people active in it at the time. Are there presumably other people that are sort of passive that are listening and not actually coming on live? So
Yeah, correct. So we have so we'll have our guests, and then we have some people that come in that just want to engage and ask questions and or be passive listeners. And then we have a core group of 5 of us that we all simulcast the same conversation to our own streams, and we record our own version.
Yeah, and I haven't used Vim yet, and it's still obviously early days with it. But does it give you sort of stats of how many people are viewing and for how long?
I don't know. It doesn't give you advanced metrics like that. It gives you more live metrics, and then you can embed like a follower count and things like that. So you get to see live on your channel screen. It'll tell you how many people are in your room.
Cool.
And but what it doesn't do is afterwards, it doesn't say like, it doesn't give you the duration and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think I saw, because I watched a bit of it the other night. Does it facilitate tipping as well? Which does it have tipping in it as well, or is it just voting?
Yeah, Vim has tipping.
Yeah, which is interesting, because one of the issues I wanted to talk about next on here generally was the sort of whole finance of shows, and in the model we use here, we don't really have the tipping facility. Although I believe is it Crimmy? You've done the tippy thing. I'm not sure what it's called now, but the thing where you can tip with, but we don't really integrate it in shows, but through using that mechanism there. I mean, do you sort of just do it for fun, so to speak, or is there an actual sort of financial plan or whatever to what you do? I mean, is it actually to make an income, or is it just for fun?
It's definitely a mix of both. And it's interesting, right? Because the conversation I've had with my wife is, man, I really wish that I would have fallen into this live streaming thing a lot, like, 10 years ago, or if I would have gone to school for visual communication technology. But I'm comfortable with it being experimental right now, because there are so many unanswered things. But no, I wrote a blog post for my company's website last year, and I called it social broadcasting, which is the blending of what we're doing. It's like the blending of conversations, creating breakout groups, having rapid fire discussions, and having everybody. That's what I like about Steam, right? And I think that there's a smart media token attached to it that could be for social broadcasting, or it might be like someone else, another developer might have a platform that I think fits. But I do think there is money in there to be earned if you are a good live streamer, or if you facilitate really good conversations.
Cool. That's a very good lead on. I think we're finance next, but I'm going to play one more song, because I have my 8 songs to ideally play in the show. So thank you, John, for that. Do hang around if you can, because I think now, if everyone's up for it, we can have a bit of a chat about, after the song, about the sort of financial side of things. So if we're lucky, I'm going to get a bit of something coming out. Here we go. This is Soundly Castaway. So I'm going to play that for a moment, and then we'll be back shortly. We're talking about finances. Hard stop coming up. I will look for that slider one day. Anyway, welcome back, everyone. That was interlude while I went refill my beverage there of water kefir today. There we go. Right. Thank you very much, everyone. John led in nicely to the whole part of finance, which I threw in my September report for the charity I run, $1 a day. If anyone wants to read it and donate it, it would be grand. I've got to 3,250 since we started in May, and I want to get to 5,000 by the end of the year. There we go. Do post. So the issues with finance and radio shows, podcast shows, whatever we call them, is two. One, the cost of running them, as in the technical cost of it, which I think with MSP is kindly donated by Egg Road. Thank you, Egg Road. And then the other aspects are the financing of the people that do the tech work behind the scenes, the financing of the show hosts, and financing or rewarding, let's say, of guests. Should any of them be rewarded? Should everyone be rewarded, or is it just for fun? I guess it's on one's view of what you're doing on the Steam blockchain. Everyone says, of course, they're here for the community and not the money. Yeah, okay. I see it now as a business. Early on, someone said to me, treat it as a business, otherwise it doesn't succeed. So I shamelessly see what I do as a business, which sounds awful to say that, but that's what I do. So what ways are, who should there be money involved in podcasting, radio, etc., or should there not? Anyone would like to chip in on that?
Yeah, Pensive, it's Global here. Well, first of all, with regard to MSP waves, we have plans. When SMTs come into play, we want to actively reward users for listening, and obviously the hosts of any show also for their time and content production and so forth. But that's down the line when SMTs come along. I believe it's March of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Aside from that, it's also an investment thing. While many people do this from their bedrooms, from their offices at home, obviously, I can't think of anyone who does it professionally from a professional studio. We need to look, I think, at quality content creation. What distinguishes MSP and any podcasting service from others? And I strive to make at least my shows, produce them at the highest quality. I know that Crimson Cloud has an absolutely amazing overlay that is just honey for the eyes, if you will. I know that Agrod invested good money to start this whole video thing. I do a video thing. I do overlays that actually look like a studio. I invested some serious money into a semi-professional studio and equipment. So it's from the investment side, and many people don't have that opportunity, and I can appreciate that. But at least setting the bar is the first step to getting to a point where we can think of rewards, I think. I'd be glad to receive some tips I haven't, and it has to do with social skills. I'm fully aware of that. I'm not the most social animal, as probably everybody knows, but in good time, I see Steemit and MSP Waves as a long game, as a long business opportunity. And for that, I'm willing to invest time and money and try to make that a better station together with Ronan and the team and other hosts. Because when one sets the bar, as for example, Krim does, then others tend to follow and try to emulate that to come up to that level.
Cool, thank you. I mean, what do you maybe someone else who's involved? I mean, JP, two aspects that I was going to ask you about. I mean, one, you've done broadcasting outside, podcasting outside of Steam beforehand. Was there a money aspect to that? And two, you've also, as you mentioned in SMA, given out tokens and things. And I don't know if anyone else has been on shows where they give out tokens. Views on that should we give out tokens to to get I'm never quite sure when giving out tokens, are you is one rewarding the audience that is there, or is the audience just coming to get the tokens? Of course, that's the conundrum of that one.
Well, I can't say whether or not someone should or shouldn't. It's really up to you. We spoke about this earlier. It's certainly a form of we call it bribery. I would say an attraction, or an incentive. It is definitely a form of rewarding, at least for whale shares. It is, because if you know anything about how it works, if you accrue enough tokens, you then can use them to cash in a very, very healthy upvote. They used to use it for Steam It, but now it's all being ported over to whale shares exclusively. Um, so it really just depends on the host and the station and all the people involved if they decide they want to do that or not. Even without the tokens, like I'll very often do things like I'll have little trivias or contests and offer upvotes. And I mean, my upvotes aren't worth really much of anything. It's more for fun and support at this point. But I will continue to do that well into the future, and at some point, it will certainly be worth money. So it is an incentive. There, as far as podcasting goes, outside of blockchain, sometimes there is money involved, sometimes there isn't. For many years, I did it as a labor of love. I was making money, other ways, and I did it just because I could. But if you're doing it outside of blockchain, obviously to make money, you either have to get hired by some kind of media company or get advertising. And that did happen sometimes, but it certainly wasn't enough to make a living. I think that blockchain has been a blessing. The Steemit has been a blessing where I can now monetize it just by the sheer fact that I'm doing it. I don't have to seek advertisers, and just the listenership and the support. And I mean, somebody has to pay for it. Unfortunately, if we could all afford it, I think we would all do it for free as much as we can. At least I would certainly would. But I don't have a choice. I mean, it has to. I know Globo, for instance. I know he's invested quite a bit. If you listen to his shows, they're very well put together, very professionally done, and you can tell that certainly cost a pretty penny. I know what it takes to do that. I've had many years experience with that. That's I think that's an unfortunate necessity, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Cool. Thank you for that. Ilana, I don't know if you would like to chip in, because Utopian, you sort of have raffles and you sort of listeners, don't you? I mean, is that something that was a conscious sort of idea to reward listeners, or was it just something that popped up along the way?
Sort of, kind of both. We wanted to more like retain users, because the way we timed the raffles is we have one kind of in the middle of the show and one toward the end. So people stay maybe because they know there's a raffle at the end, and then it kind of makes them stick around. Now the amusing part is we often just forget to do them, and nobody reminds us because the audience just forgets about it as well. The conversation is going so well and everybody's so engaged and everything's so interesting. We're just like, oh, we forgot to do the raffle today again. Oh yeah, we did. Whoops. So,
Right.
and there's there's an ongoing joke that if Crimson Clad, if she's online, she's gonna win the raffle anyway. So, there's an ongoing joke about that. But
Right.
I'm pretty sure that we forgot to do the raffle in our last show because everybody was just so interested in everything else that was going on. So, another thing I wanted to say, I've been listening in and not saying anything. Utopian, I think that the Utopian open source show is different, I think, from all the other shows on MSP Waves. We're unique because we are a branded show. We are a show by a company. Um, Unlike other people, you were talking like that. This is my business. I see this as my business. With us, it's the other way around. For us, the show is a marketing tool. It's a way to communicate with our community, with our followers, to bring new voices and interact with our community. So we're very unique in that aspect. And I think that we should not be the only ones. And so I honestly think that other initiatives should have their own shows. Like, I don't know, Steam STEM should have their own show, which would be like really interesting to listen to, about science and about posts that were curated by them in the previous, I don't know, week. So I would really like to see more groups creating their own shows like that are originating from a certain, like, a company or a brand or a curation initiative that is grown to have a radio show as one of its marketing tools, it's one of its engagement tools, and so on and so forth.
That's exactly. I agree with that too. And then the purpose of each of those different shows is different based on whether it's an organization, an individual, a company, and what their approach is, and who they want to reach with their media. And so it's just more like encourage. It's the harder part for me is encouraging people to think like that, to think like, how can I take this media that I have either with my company or as an organization or as a person and put that into something where I'm able to broaden my audience or increase my reach or bring more people to my website.
Do you see, John, do you sort of see what you do in a business context? I mean, where are you on that scale?
I see it depends on the shows that I produce. I produced one show for my company where we highlight all of our clients' work and talk about our consulting process. For the steaming pile, I wanted to do that more just to demonstrate the potential for live streaming and the potential for having breakout groups and having broad, 1 to 200 person conversations, and that we could really achieve goals when you begin and act to build communities and network together. So it really just depends. And then I do another show called Morning Coins, where that's more of a branded broadcast show where this guy approached me and he's just really interested in learning about cryptocurrency and he wanted content. And so I said, let's produce a show. So he brings the content, I do the live production, and we broadcast.
And are you sort of gradually building up an audience with that, or I mean, how's that one working?
Yeah, so he's building up his, I build up mine, and we both put it on our Steam pages and then on our websites and Facebook pages.
Cool. A couple of other bits I wanted to throw in the ring for the sort of financial side of it. I mean, if people don't want to talk about finance, do tell me to stop. It's just it's something that often people sort of want to speak about, but they don't. So I thought I'd throw it in here. I mean, two other routes to, I mean, obviously, which is why I put out 3 posts, because it gives me a bit more chance of earning off it. The other routes are potential sponsorship, getting people to support your shows in various sponsorship ways. And of course, the other one that gets thrown up every so often and generally knocked down again, and I'm not totally sure about it myself, but is advertising. Anyone in Live on Air, or anyone else, if they want to give any thoughts on A, sponsorship, and B, advertising?
Yeah, I can try. Oh, go on, Shadows. You first. We keep doing that.
We do, don't we? Well, currently, I give away SBI during the show PYPT. That is being sponsored. So if it wasn't being sponsored, I would do it myself. Of course, gives the person who's sponsoring advertising, because I announce whatever he wants announced in the show that night. So it kind of works out that way.
Is it one sponsor, or do you have a range of sponsors?
Is one sponsor at this time. Nobody else has kind of stepped up and said, "Hey, I'd like to sponsor that." So right now it's him.
Oh, right. And anyone else sort of gone the sponsoring route at all? I didn't catch it. I wasn't sure.
I can chime in a little bit. Having come from outside of Steam, where you had to kind of go out of your way to look for sponsorship, or actually, get hired by a media company who was very often, making money off of advertising. One of the ways that I've sort of been done that, I kind of look at if you look at the bottom of my posts, I will place banners. Most of them, I just do that out of the kindness of my heart. It's a group or a Discord that I support. Like I have, MSP's banner there, obviously, because I'm so heavily involved with MSP, and no one pays me to do that necessarily. But I think that helps with upvotes, it helps draw people into the Discord channels. And some of these banners, I do in a way get paid for it. We may do a trade where they put my banners and links up, or they may actually pay me. I advertise a bot right now, love it or hate it, that actually pays me to do that.
Oh, cool, cool. And did they come to you, or did you go to them?
It was a bot that I've been using for a while. It's a Moonbot. I'll go ahead and plug it. Involved in their Discord channel, and it was their idea. They put out a post about it, and I took the bait.
Good, good. I wouldn't be against that at all. I mean, is that? I mean, do you see that as sort of a little embryonic part of this becoming a business in terms of what you're doing?
Oh, sure, why not? I mean, I would, again, I'd love to do this all for free, but we all need to live, right? We all need to make a living in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, absolutely. I have, I am sort of an anarcho-agorist, anti-capitalist, but at the same time, I live under this capitalist system, and I need to eat, and my family does too.
Cool, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I mean, maybe Globo or Rondon. I mean, I guess I don't know, but I guess the topic of MSP and taking adverts and the like, has that come up in the past? Does that ever get sort of mooted as an idea?
Or none of you want to take that?
Well, it's always a thought, but I mean, especially now with the price of Steam so low, we've actually started really paying out the ass for these servers, relative to just a few 6 months ago, which when Steam was looking a lot better. So it's always a thought, but it's also something that I personally hate. I actually I go through great pains and lengths to block every single ad I possibly can, and I mean, so it's definitely not something that we would do lightly if we ever did. But
I mean, where do you see on that?
Opportunities.
I was
Well, I
going to
think with
say,
the opportunities of the blockchain and the different in this kind of new economic paradigm that we're in, I really don't think we're going to need them.
yeah. I was
don't
going to
think
say
that-
that the word advertising and sponsorship are sort of two sides of the same coin, but they have a slightly different feel about them. I mean, if someone came along and said they want to sponsor MSP as opposed to we want to slap ads all over it, would that sort of terminology feel better for you if someone wanted to sponsor MSP?
I think effectively they're the same thing. They're going to get their branding associated with MSP, or like get to talk and get to talk about whatever. It's the same thing essentially. In essence, when it comes down to it, an ad or a sponsorship still equals advertising. It's buying a spot, it's buying some time and attention from the audience that's been generated. Um,
If I may, real quick, just add to that, I like that Rondon touched on that, I failed to. I have for many years gone out of my way. I stopped watching television and listening to mainstream radio long before the internet even came along, really. And I go out of my way to block everything, even on YouTube, as much as I can. But at the same time, I'm not opposed to supporting and advertising something that I truly believe in. Like I wouldn't want to see MSP just blatantly have commercials, but advertising each other's shows and blogs and things like that, and maybe other platforms that are bringing value and bringing listenership. I wouldn't hate it. It may be annoying to disrupt the broadcasting, or maybe we could do it like a lot of European television stations where you play a whole show and then have or like PBS does it, where you just kind of tell everybody who your sponsors are and then get to the programming. So I like that Rondon mentioned that for sure.
Ronan, if I may jump in here really briefly, it was discussed earlier on. It's always been our dream to reward our hosts as well as our listeners. And unfortunately, due to the low price of Steam and our obligation to pay for hardware and services, we are not able to do this. We were actually starting a initiative where we would pay out a certain percentage of the earnings of any post that goes out on MSP to our hosts initially. And we started putting this together, and then the Steam price dropped. So right now we need to keep the lights on If we had more listeners who would vote up our posts more regularly, then we certainly would see ourselves in a position to do this. It would be great if Nat or Steam It Inc. if they thought or would see value in MSP Waves to sponsor it by delegation. That would help a long way. Similar to was done to DLive. If you had that kind of support right now, Argot has put 15,000 SP delegation into MSP Waves, and even though that's a lot, it's not enough to sustain us as per paying out gratitudes, if you will. So, but that's the end goal anyway.
Yeah.
I had
Thanks for that. Sorry, could I just get Grim on, Greg? Because Grim was asking me in chat if he could come on.
Oh, sure.
Grim? Yep, good point. Good point. Greg?
And also touching on that, well, just a quick, Grim is actually going to do a little spot for his, for what was the spot you were wanting to do for Kanakure? But we do actually already do kind of advertise on Steam Mix, which is featured on MSP Waves between live shows. So we do actually already have, I guess, advertising. And we advertise our own shows and we put it on Steam Mix. But Steam Mix is a 24-hour literal radio station that plays music. It's a playlist of, what is it now, Swoop, over 30 hours of Steam It, manually curated Steam It music that you put up. You guys keep following MSP Waves, because we're going to be releasing a big post about all the details on that. It's all put together. We're just going to have to get it scheduled. So, yeah, we're not completely against ads. We do have a little bit of advertising, but yeah, it's not paid ads. It's not. They're not really even pushy. They're just, hey, check this out. All right. So
Sorry. Thanks for that, Ron. Greg, I think you were trying to talk as well.
Yeah, I wanted to put a couple thumbs up for capitalism real quick. I feel bad sometimes being the American capitalism. I capitalist. I swear. I just want to. I'm not going to push the products that I use on my shows. We do advertise, and it's a lot more up to like Truth Force, who's he's really on that all the time. But we don't sell products like cheeseburgers and things like that. We sell things that, like survival meals, like MREs, things like that. We sell VPN protection so people can talk to us from these places that the news needs to come out of and things like that. So morally, I have no problem pushing the products, and I think that it does a lot of people good too. Because like I always say, it helps me actually to have the products as a shield against a lot of scammers and things out there. Because you put yourself out to have a lot of people reach out, and they don't even check your wallet before they start asking you for SP, and God only knows where they come from. So, offering to be able to buy them a meal and, like send it in the mail, there are ways to help people all over the world still advertise your products, not really feel like a bad person. I can swear to God, there's ways to use the capitalist system. And it's one of those things, money may be the root of all evil, but I just want to ask, what is the root of all money, guys? Because I think it's because we all need to eat. Yeah, so I don't feel bad at all, and I think more people should look into that exactly. We don't have to, advertise for, pharmaceutical companies, and the running joke in right-wing media is Fox News turned into nothing but catheter commercials and drugs that give you horrible side effects, and it's like disgraceful what they're selling. So it's not the worst thing, guys. And you know, like I want it's you know ideologically too. I get yelled at by anarchists all the time for about thousands of different reasons and things like that. But that's the beauty of it. There are things that you know are out there. They're really going to help people. Like I'm not saying send a pallet of freeze dried food to somebody in Venezuela, but you know, like it really is nice to be able to help people in more ways than one and not just hand them stuff. It's the whole teach a man to fish versus just handing out fish to people standing in a line. It depends on what kind of society you live in. I'm not trying to step on toes or whatever, guys, but I am personally not the type to stand in lines. I just don't like doing it.
Step on toes. I like that shit.
You know.
The yeah, I mean it's the issue of advertising sponsorship. Obviously, is one that particularly in the type of people that are on Steam may be tricky for some people, and I guess there's a difference between sort of advertising other parts of the blockchain and anything else out there, because you know I think a lot of people would have trouble if suddenly you know every 15 minutes an advert for McDonald's popped up in the chat here. Could be fun, but probably not popular. Whereas, you know, like JP has an advert for a bot. I get sponsored by or supported by D Sound, and Shadows has a sort of internal Steam sponsor. I don't, you know, supporting other parts of the Steam blockchain that want to be supported. You know, they're choosing to do it. I don't see that a bad thing if it helps things keep going. So you know that to me doesn't feel wrong in any shape or form. How about one other part of the finance story before we finish off on tech, of participants in shows, and this is one I have sort of a complicated thought process about, because you know, there's two parts of participants. There's the show host, and then you've got participants as in interviewees, guests, and then you've got participants as in Steam musicians. And I mean, my way of trying to sort of repay that is I will go around and vote all their posts as much as I can when people on the shows limits. Should I take anything that I earn off show posts and divide it between people on the shows? I don't presently. I possibly could, but you know, it wouldn't go round a lot because I have so many guests on the shows. What do people feel about sort of rewarding, first of all, musicians, and secondly, guests? Any thoughts on that?
Well, Asari and I host a couple shows. You know, one of them we do is curation for artistic projects on the blockchain. So while we don't necessarily have guests, we do use content that's other people. And what we're doing is trying to encourage people to check out these users, give them upvotes, and compensate them in that way. When it comes to the music show that we do, which is Steam It Musicians, where we're taking the winners of the just finished open mic contest. We have the audience vote on their favorite songs, and the top three favorite songs we then send Steam to the top three. We split it out to make sure that you know we're getting the love out there. There's a lot of times there's some great music that didn't necessarily win on open mic, but they end up being the favorites in our audience, and I think that helps a little bit.
That's cool. I like that. And you can tell that Shane definitely has a voice for this, because the minute he started talking, I'm like, oh, you know what? I have heard him before. So I've heard your show before, Shane. I like that you do that. The steaming pile is a little bit different, because all of the live streamers, they all get their own, we all get our own upvotes. Some of them are similar. A couple of them are very divergent based on the people and who they know and who they network with here. And then the guests, we never really give them to. We just invite them to come on and have a conversation. I don't know if we should or not, but we never have. But then I do give Steam to, we have a live note taker. And so she's not really live streaming with the other ones. So she doesn't have a chance to get upvotes. So what she does is she takes our graphic notes live, and we all send her Steam for her work, and then she takes those notes and writes up a summary of the show and puts that out with the final picture of the notes.
Yeah, I've seen that. That was really cool. So yeah, that's
When
good.
we bring a curator on for Curation Corner on Tuesdays, I usually send them the link, and they've got the option of putting out a post about it, of the recording.
Yes, that's a good idea. As I mentioned earlier on, if anyone wants to put a post out about this, I'll send them the links for the recordings when I put them up, and they're welcome to use them for a post of their own. And this might be a good sort of show to do it with, because obviously everyone's got different ideas and views and contributions to make to this. So, I mean, one other bit I was going to throw in here, which as I say, I something that I'm trying to work through is rewarding content contributors, so to speak, i.e., guests and musicians, and because I have a lot of them, it sort of amplifies a bit for me. I've been given some coins from the Whale Shares network, and because within the Whale Shares community, there's lots of whale tokens, and that is an interesting dynamic, which I didn't get my head around first of all, and JP knows about it. I couldn't really work it out, but eventually I sussed it out. So they create tokens and you give them out to audience, and then when you get enough of them, you can go and in effect buy a upvote with them, and depending which token it is and who it is, you get quite large upvotes on it. It would be fantastic, and I think Globo mentioned it may come soon, to have something similar here. In the meantime, I could give out Whale Shares tokens, but it's slightly awkward because this is part of Steam blockchain. Whale Shares is a different blockchain. Not sure how that fits together, and of course people have got to have a BitShares account to be able to take the tokens. EasyDex or one of those, and of course these tokens actually they get converted into a vote, but all the things they're converted into, the votes they're converted to, actually have no financial value at the moment. No one knows what the financial value of Whale Shares, etc., will be, although I think that changes in a few days. So that's another mechanism, but it's certainly, I look forward to the concept of having an MSP coin or something, or whatever it is, token that we could distribute to audience. Goes back round to what we talked about before of the is it bribery or is it not? I mean, one thing I did right early on when I started the show back in January, people might remember I did something called the 60-second quiz, and at that time, because Steam was so high, I think my vote was $3 or $4 or something. I can't remember what it was now. I did the 60-second quiz, and then whoever won got a vote off me, which was worth a few dollars at the time. But then, of course, with the price of Steam going down so much, the vote isn't worth enough to quite make it worthwhile. It'd be whatever it is, 37 cents or something, because most of my stuff is in dollar a day. So that's another way of having little quizzes and things to reward audience. Do many people use anything like quizzes or anything in their shows to reward audience?
Yes, we do. Isaria and I will throw out really obscure movie quotes, or in my bad singing voice, I'll sing an obscure song from the 80s, and the first person to guess it will usually send 5 or 10 Steam to, depending on what we think the difficulty is. So it helps with user engagement. That's the one thing we really like to do, is make sure that we notice the audience, engage with the audience, and have giveaways so that people feel like they want to be there, they want to listen, and that they're part of the show.
Yeah, I mean that's something I always struggle with, just being a solo host. It's obviously, if you've got more than one host, I guess that's a little bit easier because two of you can be watching it, because one person doing it is, I find, quite hard to keep track of all the audience and everything else I'm doing at the same time. But that definitely is a good idea. Does anyone else use that in their shows, of that sort of mechanism of engaging audience and rewarding audience?
Yeah, we've tried contests and things like that, and I couldn't personally, I couldn't tell a substantial increase in the engagement in the audience. I guess that's why we never really. That's why we're not making it a regular thing. But if it comes up, we'll try it. But we haven't been noticing a substantial change in the engagement. That's all I would say at this point.
Yeah, no, because I sort of, I couldn't detect enough of the change, because I did experiment with two accounts. I had one called Pieces of 8, which I was using to people that participated in the show, either as guests or regular audience participants. I set up an account and delegated to it, and they got a regular auto vote off it. And then I did Alt Life for the other show, the Alternative Lifestyle show. They had a few thousand in them, so the votes were worth 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents. But I couldn't particularly detect enough of a change. But of course, you've got the dynamic of Steam changing and all the rest of it. I couldn't really detect enough of it. But I would love to do that again if I had more Steam power to do it, because it's sort of got to be enough to be noticeable. But the management of it, particularly for audience, because if audience come and goes, how long do you keep voting for them and the rest of it? But the whole area of that is an interesting one to explore. So that's finance. I mean, I think Agro was saying about SMT and that. Yep, definitely looking forward to that coming. Last bit, I think we've got another. We've got 15 odd minutes. I was going to throw a bit in about technology, which we've covered indirectly at various points. If anyone else that's not on live on air that would like to come on live on air and throw anything in the ring, do feel free to put their hand up and say and tag me a few times in case I miss it. But I don't know, Isario, if anyone else or Clay, anyone else wants to come on and say anything. Otherwise, I was just going to sort of finish up on tech. I mean, tech is something that is changing. Very interested to hear from Globo and Rondon about the idea of this sort of, I don't know what we call it, sort of radio podcasting open source package. Sounds really, really interesting to come up with. And John Spalding is using Vim, which I haven't yet tried. MSP is putting out on Vim as well, which I think is still alpha, isn't it? Vim, I think, at the moment. Where do people see their future in the tech? I guess the ideal is to go out on as many methods as you can. Anyone got any views on what they find best to get their shows out on?
You mean as far as platforms, or
yes, tech and platforms?
Yeah, I mean, as far as platforms, as I said before, I still consider myself very new to this kind of platform, even though the platform itself is still in its infancy. I I think that initially I was so passionate about abandoning mainstream social media that I feel like I kind of rushed to it, and I think that we may want to kind of do a little dance, a little back and forth, and not completely put all our eggs in one basket just yet. Um, so I don't want to speak too much about that side of the tech, but as far as like the physical tech, that's something I've been into for a long, long time, and I think it's really awesome that now it's much more affordable to have really professional equipment, and there's a lot of free open source software, and even some of the paid software is quite affordable for some of us, where we can really have high production values, and I think that's important. That even if you're only putting, if you're still working a full-time job and you're kind of scrambling to put your posts together last minute, I still think it helps to sit back and take a few seconds to kind of really tidy it up and make it look somewhat professional and use some imagery and make it somewhat attractive. I think that really helps to augment the entire experience. That doesn't mean that everybody's show has to sound like Lobo's, but still, take your time as much as you can and put some effort into it, because the tech is there. It's there for us to use regardless what operating system or what kind of devices you're on. It's only getting better and better and easier to use.
Cool. Because you to do your podcast, you were using, was it Mix? What's called?
So yeah. So the one thing that I still hold on to that's not decentralized is a program called MixLR, which it's been around for a long time. I think I first paid for MixLR in like 2005 or 6, and it may have been around for years before that. It's a free app for the listeners. The only reason why main reason why I love it so much is not just the way it looks, but it's a lot better fidelity for audio. I've had a lot of people compare it to Discord. Discord is amazing. I love the way Discord works. It's a lot of fun when it comes to chatting, and you get to use your icons and all kinds of cool GIFs and things, see, which you can't do on MixLR. but it's really not the best for audio. If you're doing an all music show and really concentrating on music, it does degrade the audio quality a bit. So if you're an audiophile, it's not going to be your favorite thing to listen to music on. So that's why I hold on to MixLR, and there are a couple other things. I mean, Shoutcast is actually still being used around the world, and that's free to use, but a little bit more complicated. So MixLR, it's an annual fee that I pay for, so I can stream 3 hours at a time. They actually have a higher tiers where you can stream like 24 hours. It costs a lot more money. But I think I pay like $59 a year, but it's a legacy account. It recently went up to 89, but because I've had it for so long, they kept me at the 59 price point. Thank God.
Good. Anyone that's used both, I use DLive a little bit. I wasn't a great user. I used it a few times, but since that's, I was going to say, since that's gone, has anyone used both DTube and Vim, and what their respective thoughts on those two are, and whether DTube is going to catch up, or because Vim is only alpha at the moment? Or just any thoughts on Vim versus DTube, or are they both as good?
So far, my limited trial with Vim, it's worked really well. It's still new. There are a lot of kinks to iron out, and I think they just sort of came along at the same time DLive is going away. So I believe their growth is outpacing what they were expecting. So they're having some hiccups that way. But from what I've used, they've been solid so far.
Yeah, John. I mean, you using Vim at the moment? Have you also?
Yeah, they're solid, responsive. I'll be honest. Every time I've tried to use DTube, either the file type wasn't supported, I wasn't able to get the link the right way for how they wanted me to set up my thumbnail, and so I really just kind of got frustrated and moved on. One thing that I miss is the VOD portion that DLive did, where they kept your stuff and you were able to access it, or people that missed the live could watch it later. And so with Vim, it's really just focused on live, and so you have to do your own VOD workaround. But I really, so, but other than that, it's accessible, it's responsive, and one of the cool features that I like is you never have to give them a different channel link. It's the same, like your page is your page, and not only that, you can embed it on another website, so when you're live, you're live.
Ah, cool. And do they is your mechanism, you record your shows in OBS at the same time and then put it out on DTube or YouTube afterwards, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I tried to do DTube when DLive left, but I've just been using unlisted on YouTube. So then it's not really, so then really the only people that see the VOD are people that happen to see my posts on Steam.
All right. Do you know if Vim has got any plans to do VOD like DLive, or is that not part of their?
I don't really. It's interesting. I don't really know what. It's really only 2 people right now, from what I know, and I know they got a big delegation from the Real Wolf. But we had Sharon on 4 days before the whole DLive thing came out, and he's one of the main developers. And it's interesting because we invited DLive to come on, and they kept not getting back to us, and we're like, it's weird that they wouldn't come on to a show about the best practices of live streaming. They're a live streaming company, and then they did it, and we're like, aha. So I texted Sharon, I'm like, or not texted him, I messaged him on Discord, and I'm like, I bet your phone's blowing up right now. And he's like, you have no idea. So yeah, I do know that they're actively like taking suggestions, doing what they can, and like I know their first thing, and I think Shane might be able to speak to that too, is like there was a lot of buffering and things like that, and so they had this Vim raid day planned for this Saturday, and they actually had Vim raid day on like the day of the hard fork, or the day before, right, where everybody's like, all right, DLive's gone, let's try Vim, and they tried, and everyone was getting buffering and things like that. But I think the first thing they did was upgrade the servers and increase the bandwidth and all that stuff.
Lucky break, I think that's called. I came across Vim early on because I worked for Fundition, and it came past me when I was looking at projects there, and I thought, this was whatever it was, 6, 7, 8, 2 months ago. I can't remember.
Basically, here in the audience now, he's part of the Vim team.
Who's that? Us? Right. Oh, that's useful to know. Cool. But yeah, when I saw it there, I thought, oh, hang on, how are they going to compete against D Live? And then they got the lucky break. So congratulations, basically.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, does anyone know what happened to D Live?
Well, yeah. Yeah, they
I'm
won
on
it.
there now.
I hadn't heard, so maybe
Oh
Sheriff.
yeah,
Maybe I'm not
they
the only
were
one who's out of.
That's a big story for a different show, I think.
sure. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, we got about 7 minutes left here.
There's a bunch of
Yeah.
posts on it. It's good reading, actually, including all the comments.
Depending which end of the story you come from, it can take different views. But Menno did a great post on it, so if you check out Menno, I don't know if Menno can maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
Drop-
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah,
good.
he's in here. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, Menno, I don't know if you can drop the link for Zig on that, because I think yours
Yeah,
got
I'd
to
love
the
to read that. Yeah.
got to the bottom and beyond, I think, of that story. So that would be
Wait,
cool.
Minnow, do we have anybody coming up next? I don't think we do. I think actually that was.
No, it was Nick's show afterwards, I think. So I don't think that's filled yet. So, but I think
Oh.
we're just about rounding it off. Anyone got any other thoughts on where tech is going on for radio? I mean, I'd be interested to know a bit more. I don't know if you can say any more, Globo or Ron, on the sort of this open source radio package, which sounds rather interesting.
Ron, you want to take this?
Oh, I just found out I have a bunch of groceries to carry up.
Oh.
Sorry. Right here at the time of where we were building up to. And I was also going to say too, Pensive, we could probably make it where you go longer if you want to today. I know it's very late for you there in the UK, so.
Yeah, I've been going 3 hours, so I'm getting a bit jaded. I have time to eat beforehand, so
But this open source radio, the biggest I think one of MSP Wave's biggest assets is the staff that makes what happen. And it's not, I mean, as a host, as a DJ, you can understand like the commitment it takes just to do a 3-hour show a week. And we have staff here that does, somewhere between 20 and 40 hours a week of being here, managing all the stuff that happens, making sure that there's a certain amount of quality, making sure that the shows happen on time, and making sure it's going out to every single Discord and Vim and Twitch, and then the Icecast streams, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and there really is a lot of staff work it takes, and that's where the open source automated. So it's open source automated radio solution, I believe, right? Is that right, Globo?
Yeah, what were Ozar or Ozar? Ozar.
Ozars. But you know what? Actually, I like this term that John Spalding, I think, is the one who said it. If I'm correct, what was that now? The social broadcasting. Yeah, because it's not really radio, as we were talking going full circle now, right at the beginning. We were talking. It's not really radio. It's broadcasting, and it's not even really. It's not podcasting. It's So like maybe interactive social broadcasting would be a better term for it. But making all of this into one package and actually reducing the staff cost that it takes to produce the same caliber is really the next step in this. Automating what can be automated.
To reduce the
open source
intervention
technology.
necessary by any ops team, because it takes a huge, it takes a huge amount of dedication for a team of 4 to operate 24/7. There's that. The main thing then also is not only do you have to trust the people, they also have to have a certain technological understanding. So you might have somebody willing who's but not that technically inclined, and we unfortunately are limited. So we're trying to put together a automated solution that is literally plug and play, where you have a very simple interface. And but I don't want to give away too much. It's still work in progress, and I think we need to involve Utopian into this project anyway.
Cool. Lana's
from
gone now.
Vision-
Unfortunately.
Oh no, I gotta take off here and go get some groceries. This is really bad timing, but
Right. Thank you very much, Rondon. I mean, we'll be finishing shortly, but thank you very much for coming on the show and for all the team behind this show and all the others, and Menno and Globo, and all the other tech people as well. So thank you very much. And we're coming to the very end. I don't know if anyone wants to throw in any last minute comments. Next week I will be back with another show of a totally different nature. In fact, next week, should I do a bit of clickbait? Yeah, let's do a bit of clickbait. Next week I've got a threesome with Surfer Marley. There you go. That's all I'm saying at this moment. The anyone else got anything they would like to throw in? Thank you very much to all my guests. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember to or everyone that's been on, but
I think Pensive, we should all downvote you with a decent D flag, so you stay humble. No, just kidding. I just wanted to throw this out, Pensive. You know, I remember the good old times when I was still in the UK last year at this time, and we were hosting Frequency Waves 432 together. And this was for two purposes, really, to get you comfortable with the system and also to test your bandwidth for your own shows. And I have to say, I remember that it's one of my, fondest times on waves. That was
they were good fun, and thank you very much for tutoring me and mentoring me and getting me going on. So
always.
They were good fun, and started with me in short trousers, didn't they? It took several shows before I got into long trousers, wasn't it?
And yeah, we showed X-rated movies.
Well, they've been deleted. I ran out of space on the server.
I still have them.
Right, I will quickly go and upvote all your posts there, Globo.
You can buy them back for a certain amount of Steam.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Experimental format for me. I hadn't done this sort of open forum before, but I think it was okay, and hopefully people found it useful and interesting. So thank you very much to all the guests that came along, and thank you very much to all the listeners. And yeah, do come along next week. As I say, we've got a different show. I'm doing a show with Surfer Marley next week, so that should be interesting. And yeah, I'll probably change the format of the show every week into something new. So there we go. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. And I will pop my show post there just so you know what you've been listening to if you haven't. And thank you to everyone that came along, to Denise Devine, Fracas Grimm, Global Crop, Gregory Patrick, John Spalding, JR Swab, Main Event, Menno, Movement 19, One Media, Rhonda K, Rondon, Shadows Pub, Shane, Svelka, and anyone else that I can't remember just now. Thank you very much. I think we're finishing in a minute or two. Be interested in feedback on whether people like this format of show or not. And as I say, if anyone wants to make a post out the recordings, I'll pop them up tomorrow and I can send them direct links. So cool. And yeah, I think we're done. Good night, everybody.